Y'all have heard a lot today. You've heard a lot about the who's and the where's and the what's. So I thought I would talk about the why. You really won't see a lot of my art today. You'll see more about me. But since, like most artists, I'm a storyteller, I thought I'd start out with that. So a few years back, I had just finished dinner with one of my close friends, and we're walking to the parking lot, and her daughter was, I'm gonna say 3 at the time, and she started giving her attitude. And I think it's because my friend told her to put her skirt down, like, you know, she had it above her head. And I saw that my friend was about to say something, and then she abruptly stopped herself. Her daughter ran off, and she turned to me and said, I was about to tell her that nice girls don't do that. But I remember that my mom used to tell me that, and it just ticked me off. And so that really resonated with me because of a very complicated relationship I have with that term of just being a nice girl. So yeah, we're gonna delve into that a little bit. So I grew up in a southern town, or a city even, of Augusta, Georgia. If you don't know where Augusta is, it's about roughly two and a half hours away from Atlanta to the east. We are right on the border with South Carolina on the Savannah River. It's where the home of the Masters golf tournament is and the claimed birthplace of James Brown. So there's a lot more to it, but I'm not teaching you about Augusta. And there's a specific way of thinking and specific traditions that resonate and come up with a smaller town or a southern town that feels small. And a lot of people may already have similar things or can kind of relate to it, but traditions like debutante balls with the girls in white dresses, and that despite being relatively large population-wise, it seemed like every single person knew every single person. And if they didn't know, they were not afraid to ask who your dad was, not your mom, who your dad was, and what church you went to. And so, speaking of church, every Sunday my family went to church, unless we were out of town, and then even then my dad would try to find a church for us to go to. And there were no excuses. And I remember one morning laying on the floor of our living room trying to feign sickness because I just didn't want to go again. Like, I really didn't have a problem with church. I was just tired of it being every Sunday. It was pretty. I wanted to go outside and play. That did not work. And then I got a lecture on why that was not ladylike and that lying is not what nice girls do, hence the topic. And so, yeah. So every Sunday, my sister and I were always dressed in our Sunday best, all the way down to those fold-over white socks with the lace trim. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of nodding because every girl in the South had her church socks, right? Like, you didn't play in those socks. Those were only church socks, and if they were really special, you might have like the fake pearls on them or something. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. And so if you would pair those with the Peter Pan collars and the huge bows and maybe 1 or 2 monograms, we pretty much look like we just walked out of a Kelly's Kids catalog. That is my sister and myself at Easter. And so no matter how much I hated having my hair brushed, because I was very much considered a tomboy, I think I've broken the same collarbone 3 times from falling out of trees. And every holiday I was in the hospital because I fell down an escalator. I tried to fly one time. Like, this is not how I wanted to be necessarily. But I really knew there was no way out of it because I was a reflection of my parents and especially a reflection of my mother. So even though at this age, I didn't have the words or really the ability to express myself in those like deep emotions, I knew that how I looked, how like put together I was, how well behaved I was, and how pretty my sister and I were, that other people, mostly other women, were viewing and evaluating my mother based on how good of a mom that she was, based on how pretty and how good we were. Sorry, this keeps about that. So I absorbed that lesson and I filed it away, which was simply that a good mother always makes sure that her daughters look beautiful and act nice, especially at church, because that's when everybody sees you. So then, a little bit later, that brought on something, because while I was growing up, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. And that brought on a whole feeling because, actually back up. First things first is I was an 80s baby. I grew up with Dolly Parton's 9 to 5 and Murphy Brown, which I believe her. So there were tough women, ambitious women, career-driven women. And I knew at a young age, and it had been told to me, that I was expected to do well in school, to go to college, and then to do something with my life. That's just always what was told to me. But even so, by third grade, I could tell you which of my friends' moms worked. And it was because of the tone of voice that other people, especially other women, would say, like, oh, well, so-and-so's mom couldn't be at the field trip because she has to work, or because she chose to work, as though there was something wrong with choosing to have a career. But so I filed that away, that it's, moms don't work until their kids are in school. And even then, moms are expected to join the PTA. They're supposed to volunteer, and they're supposed to provide homemade baked things for bake sales. So as I got older, the lessons got a lot less subtle. I was never given the talk, because nice girls aren't interested in that type of thing anyways. But adults made sure to tell you who you did not want to be. And they used tone on it, because they would say something such as, you don't want to be one of those girls. They never really told you what one of those girls were, but you knew those girls were not what you wanted to be. It would say things such as, why buy the cow when you can get the milk for free? I'd think, yeah, that's my face too. She stuck out her tongue and was like gagging. Because, first question, why did you just refer to me as a cow and livestock? Second, why are you saying you can buy me? And third, how come we're never talking about the men hanging out with those girls? The ones you tell me I'm not supposed to be, the recipients of the free milk? They're never talked about. But the women, well, we were cows. And so that is, in those conversations, that would be even if a nice girl would have that conversation, because you wouldn't. As a Southern woman, you're supposed to be a good hostess. A good hostess doesn't talk about, you don't talk about sex, you don't talk about politics, and you don't talk about religion, because they're unsavory topics that make people uncomfortable. They're, polarizing. So you don't talk about that. You talk about stuff in the middle of the newspaper. Arts and lifestyle, you can talk about that. Travels, talk about that. But anything that might upset somebody, things that would ruffle feathers, do not talk about that. That is not what a nice Southern girl does. So we're going to fast forward a little bit. And after my husband and I were married, any attempt at being subtle just went straight out the window. First question, I believe within 3 days of being married, was, when are you having kids? So if you've noticed throughout this talk, I've rarely mentioned womanhood without tying it to motherhood. And it's what you did. I'm not saying that this is everyone's story, but I think people could at least see it, whether it's in pop culture or maybe you did live it. The plan was always that you play nice, you do well in school, you go to college. If it's in the South, you preferably go to an SEC school. You meet a nice Southern man, emphasis on that as well. You're meeting a nice Southern man, that's what you're taught. You get married, you buy a house, and then you have babies. You have all the babies. And that's the plan. And you stick to the plan. It's very simple, not much leeway from it. That's what people tell you you're supposed to do. And for the most part, I did. I was always a straight A student. I graduated at the top of my class from the University of Georgia. Go Bulldogs. I know I'm in Tennessee, but I'm there. I did, in fact, meet my husband in college. We were dissecting a cat. Super romantic. My background's in scientific illustration, in case you're curious why I was dissecting a cat. We did get married. I was 22, and then we did buy a house. But I had known since I was 20 that I didn't want to be a mother. No problem with anyone wanting to be a mother, it just wasn't my calling. I think it's miraculous, and I think it's amazing that women can do it. I just didn't want to. And when people found out, they really, really didn't like it. It was as though I noticed that the moment people were faced with differences, and this really goes to everything, not just children, usually the first emotion people give you is anger. They're going to tell you that you're wrong because you're doing it different than I am, as opposed to, we're just doing it differently. And that's completely fine. So the moment people heard that I wasn't having children, and that it wasn't because I couldn't, because that seemed to be the only loophole. People would always say, oh, can you not? And I thought it was wrong of me to say that I couldn't, because there are so many women battling with not being able to when they want to, that I wasn't going to steal that story just to make it easier on me. So I owned it, and yeah, people just weren't nice about it. So this one was said to me when I was grocery shopping by, I'd say, about a 70-year-old woman who did not know me. The woman told me, in the lotion aisle, you'll never give your husband the family that he wants. Again, then he shouldn't have married me. It's okay. But she was right, because this is the family my husband wants. We talked about it the first day. He also does not want children, in case anyone's wondering if we did. And this is the family I gave him. This is Bear. The next one was said by a family member. Why even get married if you aren't going to have children, kids? Well, the reason anybody wants to be with people, you love someone, you want to be with them. Which, again, circling back to when people can't have children, don't say this kind of stuff. That's wrong. This one. You'll change your mind. Which anybody who has chosen something that is not what someone else wants you to do, they tell you you're in a phase, right? Like, don't worry, you'll come around to what I think. You'll pick my way. That's super condescending, so just don't do that. Yeah. This one, you'll never know true love. That's just mean. Don't do that. But my least favorite, but also what spurred on my entire body of work, is this one. But motherhood is a woman's sole purpose. Ouch. So if that is my sole purpose, and I'm not going to have children, then do I not have a purpose? Or then what is my purpose? Because I was trying to figure out what it meant to be a Southern woman. Because it couldn't just be living in the South, because I had already moved to Denver by this time, and I still felt Southern, so it wasn't your location. It couldn't just be cooking with butter, though I do that a lot. And I also have a jar of bacon grease, which apparently creeps people out if you're not from the South. I don't know why. Or even having kids dressed in matching monograms and the big bows. Like, being Southern had to be more than that, and being a woman had to be more than that. And so I really wanted to know where I fit, which I think is what, even if this is not your story, that I think everybody feels that way. You don't have to be a woman to feel that you want to know where you fit in society, where you fit in your life, what your purpose is. So I poured, I wanted to know where I would fit, mostly because I actually really love being from the South. Yeah, like I said, I lived in Denver. My husband and I really missed the South, so we moved back to Atlanta. And then And I really love some traditions. Like, I'm not bashing Southern tradition. I think there's some beauty in it. There's some backwards things that I think could go away. But I actually really loved some of that. It's just there were certain things that I didn't fit into. And so I didn't like when people tried to put me into a box, or that they tried to limit me and tell me that this was all you could do, this was your sole purpose, this is what you do, end of story. But luckily, I'm an artist. So like most artists, I poured all of my thoughts and my feelings into my work because I wanted to tell a different story. I wanted to tell a story that was complicated and contradictory and messy and beautiful, and I just wanted to tell my story and define what Southern womanhood meant to me. So in my most recent body of work, which I don't know if I did that. I did. It's called my Dreams in Color series because I dreamt it first, and it's kind of breaking out of the black and white of what people tell you to do, hence in color. I did that. I dove in, I culled through all the lessons about what it meant to be a woman, what I've been told, and I'm not saying that these were even things where my parents were telling me. This was mostly society. My parents were actually pretty great about go do what you want to do. They do miss the grandchildren thing, but my sister just had a baby, so they're a little okay. But so I went through all the lessons and what it meant to be a woman, both personally for me and what it meant in society, and how to stay within the lines of tradition and social expectations, which I literally draw with the line work. That is what that is representing. And then explored what made me who I am, which is represented by the pools of watercolor. And I wanted to capture how the overlap happens and how they influence each other, and the beauty that happens and the strength that happens from the conflict and the resolution of having to occupy the same space. And even how I create them kind of speaks to my experience with it. The line work is really rational. It's almost second nature. I instinctually know where these boundaries are. You don't have to tell me. I think all of us can, whether you follow the boundary or not, you know what it is. You know what society tells you you're supposed to be doing. I'm making a lot of noise because I'm walking around a lot. But then the watercolor is just much freer. It's wild, it's spontaneous, and it's unpredictable. And it kind of has a mind of its own. And I just find such beauty in that freedom, in the variations and the spontaneity, and how it breaks outside of the boundaries and just creates something completely unique and individualized. And no matter how many times I would try to recreate this painting, I never could. Never could do it again. And that without the balance of the lines and the traditions, then the color's going to fall flat and lose its depth. But then without the color, the lines fall flat. It really is, it only works when you bring them together. And when you're putting the past and the present and who you are versus what you're supposed to be, when you put it all together, that's when you see the big picture. So, I guess overall, what I learned is that while coloring outside of lines is not what nice girls do, it is definitely what strong women do. But so thank you so much. Thanks for listening to me talk, and I hope everyone has a great rest of the day. So, thanks.